1 minute ago, the heart of the Canadian financial system stopped beating. The headline from the Financial Post didn't just report a market dip, it delivered a death sentence. The Canadian dollar outlook just got trashed. This isn't just a headline, it is an obituary for a sovereign economy. But to understand why the loonie is in a vertical freefall, crashing through support levels that have held for decades, you have to look 5,000 miles south to the burning oil fields of the Orinoco Belt in Venezuela. Donald Trump has just executed what insiders are calling his most ruthless genius move, yet a maneuver that weaponizes the global energy supply to bring an old ally to its knees. Imagine a world where the most stable border on Earth, the 49th parallel, is no longer a bridge, but a wall. For decades, the relationship between the United States and Canada was built on a simple, unspoken agreement. Canada provides the resources, and the U.S. provides the market. It was a symbiotic relationship that fueled the growth of the North American middle class. But in the world of 2026, agreements are being rewritten in real time as a massive fire rages across the Venezuelan energy sector, a fire many believe was ignited by U.S. economic sabotage and military posturing. The shockwaves are hitting Ottawa with the force of a tsunami. Tonight, we break down the secret dossier that explains how a crisis in South America is being used to liquidate the Canadian economy. As the Canadian dollar hits lows not seen since the Great Depression in terms of purchasing power, Mark Carney, the man tasked with saving Canada's economy, has just issued a one-word reply that has sent NATO into a state of absolute panic. Is this the end of the Canadian economy as we know it, or is this a calculated annexation of Canada's energy sector by the United States? This is not just news. This is the beginning of the uranium war. We are diving deep into the data, the secret meetings, and the terrifying reality of the trashed loonie. The Canadian dollar, long affectionately known as the loonie, is what economists call a petrocurrency. For the average citizen in Toronto or Calgary, this might seem like a technical term, but it is the lifeblood of their prosperity. Its value is inextricably linked to the price of oil. When oil flows and prices are high, Canada prospers. When oil crashes, Canada burns. But Donald Trump's return to the White House has introduced a level of volatility and economic realism that the world wasn't prepared for. By aggressively intervening in Venezuela to secure a new, cheaper source of heavy crude for Gulf Coast refineries, Trump has effectively demoted Canadian oil. The refineries in Texas and Louisiana were built to process heavy crude, the exact kind of oil produced in the Alberta oil sands. For years, Canada had a monopoly on this supply. But Trump has flipped the script. He has negotiated a protection deal with the new Venezuelan Energy Authority, essentially flooding the market with alternative heavy crude. The strategy is simple and brutal. Flood the market, drive down the price of Western Canadian Select, and watch as the Canadian economy loses its primary source of foreign exchange. The Financial Post's report on the trashed outlook is a direct result of this market manipulation. It's not just about oil, it's about currency. As the CAD-USD exchange rate collapses, the cost of everything imported into Canada, from iPhones to avocados, is skyrocketing. Inflation, which Carney promised to control, is now back with a vengeance. Why the burning oil wells in our thumbnail? Because they represent the destruction of the old energy order. Trump isn't just building a new America, he's clearing the field of competitors. Every barrel of Venezuelan oil that reaches Texas is a nail in the coffin of the Alberta oil sands. The message from Mar-a-Lago is clear. We don't need your oil anymore, Canada, unless you're willing to give us something even more valuable. The markets have seen the fire, and they are fleeing the loonie. This is the structural collapse the Financial Post was talking about. It isn't a dip, it's a reset. But oil is just the opening act, the smoke before the real fire. The real war, the one that will define the next century and determine which superpower controls the future of human civilization, is being fought over a silver-gray metal found deep beneath the frozen forests of Saskatchewan. Uranium. The year 2026 has seen an explosion in artificial intelligence that has outpaced even the most radical predictions. Large language models and AGI prototypes are no longer just software, they are industrial behemoths. Massive data centers are being constructed across the United States at a rate of one per week. These machines do not sleep. They do not eat. They consume electricity in quantities that stagger the mind. In fact, a single AI training session can consume as much power as a small American city. Silicon Valley is hungry not for venture capital, but for raw, unadulterated power. The aging coal plants of the Ohio Valley cannot keep up. Solar and wind are too intermittent for the demands of 24/7 AI processing. The solution? Nuclear power. The renaissance of the atom is here. But the United States has a fatal flaw. It has neglected its domestic uranium production for 40 years. Since the end of the Cold War, the U.S. has relied on dismantled Russian warheads and cheap imports, but those wells have run dry. Currently, the U.S. produces a mere 2 million pounds of uranium per year, while its reactors require over 45 million. By 2030, that requirement is expected to triple as SMRs, small modular reactors, are deployed to power the AI hubs. This is the power deficit that keeps Donald Trump up at night. He knows that if America loses the AI race because it can't keep the lights on, the American century is over. This is where Canada becomes the most important piece on the chessboard. Canada sits on the world's largest and highest grade uranium deposits in the Athabasca Basin. To Trump, this isn't just a trade opportunity. It's a national security asset that happens to be on the wrong side of the border. This is the core of the uranium ultimatum. This brings us to what insiders are calling Trump's genius move. How do you force a proud, sovereign nation like Canada to hand over its most precious resource at a discount? You break their currency first. By trashing the Canadian dollar through oil market manipulation and aggressive tariff threats, Trump has created a situation where Ottawa is desperate for a financial lifeline. Imagine the scene inside the Oval Office. Trump looks at the charts. He sees the loonie falling. He sees the Canadian debt levels rising. He knows that Mark Carney and the Canadian government are backed into a corner. He offers a deal. The United States will lift the 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum, and it will stop the oil war with Venezuela. But in exchange, Canada must sign the North American Energy Security Accord. This accord would give the United States first right of refusal for all Canadian uranium exports. It would essentially turn Canada into the private battery of the U.S. AI industry. It is a brilliant, ruthless move. By the time the Canadian public realizes what has happened, their energy sovereignty will have been signed away to stabilize their failing currency. The Financial Post article was just the signal. The trashed outlook was the pressure point. Trump is playing 4D chess with Canada's future, and he is currently several moves ahead. However, Donald Trump has met his match in Mark Carney. Carney is not a typical politician. He is a man of the global elite, a former governor of the Bank of England and the Bank of Canada. He is a technocrat who speaks the language of Wall Street and the World Economic Forum. He understands the uranium trap better than anyone in Ottawa. Carney knows that if Canada gives in to this ultimatum, the country will effectively become the 51st state in everything but name. In a closed-door meeting last week, a U.S. trade delegation presented the final terms of the energy accord. They expected a surrender. They expected Canada to beg for mercy as the loonie plummeted towards 60 cents against the U.S. dollar. Instead, they met the cold, calculated gaze of Mark Carney. When asked if Canada would accept the exclusive supply clause for uranium, Carney didn't give a speech. He didn't offer a counter-proposal. He gave a single, devastating word: diversify. This one-word reply has sent shockwaves through the diplomatic community. What does it mean? It means Canada is no longer looking to Washington as its sole partner. It means Carney has already been in talks with the European Commission in Brussels. It means Canada is talking to Tokyo, Seoul, and Paris. It means that if Trump wants to play energy realism, Canada will play it too. Canada will sell its uranium to whoever pays the highest price and offers the most respect, even if that means bypassing the United States entirely. This one-word reply is a declaration of economic independence, but it is also a massive gamble that could lead to a total trade war. The fallout from Carney's one-word reply was immediate. At NATO headquarters in Brussels, the alarm bells are ringing. For 75 years, the North American alliance was the bedrock of global stability. The U.S. and Canada were more than allies. They were an integrated economic and military machine. But the uranium war has created a rift that may be irreparable. If Canada diversifies its uranium exports, the U.S. power grid, and by extension, the U.S. military's AI capabilities will be at risk. Trump's advisors have already suggested that any attempt by Canada to sell strategic minerals to non-U.S. entities could be viewed as a national security threat under Section 232. This is the language of war, not diplomacy. NATO leaders are terrified. If the two largest members of the alliance are engaged in a resource war, who will protect Europe? Who will patrol the Arctic as Russia and China move in? The alarm is real. We are seeing a fundamental shift in the world order. The global Dossier reveals that the U.S. is already moving military assets to protect energy infrastructure near the border. This isn't just about trade anymore, it's about control of the North American continent. While the titans clash on the international stage, the average Canadian is living through a nightmare. The Financial Post article highlighted a disturbing trend that the government is trying to hide: the internal exodus. High-level officials within the Bank of Canada, top-tier software engineers, and nuclear scientists are leaving the country in record numbers. Why? Because they see the writing on the wall. When your currency is trashed, your life savings evaporate. If you are a scientist in Saskatoon and you get an offer from a U.S. firm paying in U.S. dollars, you take it. This brain drain is hollowing out Canada's future. The structural change mentioned by the Financial Post is a polite way of saying the system is breaking. Inside the Bank of Canada, the atmosphere is toxic. Carney is fighting a losing battle against market gravity. Every time he tries to stabilize the dollar, a new Truth Social post from Trump or a new development in the Venezuelan oil fire sends the markets into another panic. It is a masterclass in asymmetric economic warfare. The phrase, "it's over," is no longer a meme. It is a sentiment being discussed in the boardrooms of Bay Street. The Canada of 2026 is a country on the brink of a nervous breakdown. We must ask, is Donald Trump a genius for securing the fuel of the future, or is he committing a historic blunder? By pushing Canada so hard, he might be forcing them into a permanent pivot away from the United States. If Canada successfully diversifies and signs a 100-year deal with the European Union or an Asian power bloc, the United States could find itself in a permanent energy deficit. The AI revolution, the genius move that was supposed to save the American economy, could stall because of a lack of Canadian uranium. On the other hand, if Trump's maximum pressure campaign works, he will have secured American dominance for the next century. He will have effectively annexed the Canadian energy sector without firing a single shot. This is the high-stakes game of 2026. The burning oil fields, the falling charts, and the face-to-face confrontation between Trump and Carney are all parts of the same story. As we look at the data, the conclusion is inescapable. The old North American order is dead. The seamless border is a thing of the past. We are entering an era of resource sovereignty and currency warfare. The Canadian dollar may eventually find a bottom, but the trust that once existed between Ottawa and Washington is gone. Canada is being forced to choose: become a vassal state of the American AI empire, or risk total economic collapse in the pursuit of diversification. It is a choice no nation should have to make. But in the world of Donald Trump's 2026, it is the only choice available. The global Dossier will continue to track every movement of the uranium markets and every secret meeting in the halls of power. The story of the 2026 uranium war is more than just a financial report. It is a story of power, betrayal, and the raw hunger for the resources that will define our future. The fire at the oil fields is a metaphor for a burning trade relationship that may never be extinguished. One thing is certain: the era of business as usual is dead. The "it's over" for the Loonie might be the genius move for the White House, but for the average person caught in the middle, it is a period of unprecedented uncertainty. The Financial Post was right, the outlook is trashed. But in every crisis, There is opportunity for those who can see the truth behind the headlines. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the global dossier. This is a developing situation that the mainstream media is too afraid to cover in this level of detail. If you want to stay ahead of the curve and understand how these geopolitical shifts will affect your wallet, your investments, and your future, you need to be part of this community. Click the like button if you found this 20-minute analysis valuable. It helps the algorithm push this truth to more people who are being lied to by the mainstream press. Subscribe to the channel and turn on all notifications. We are tracking the uranium war and the Venezuela catalyst daily, and you won't want to miss our next dossier update. What do you think? Was Mark Carney's one-word reply a stroke of genius or a fatal mistake? Is Trump right to put America first, even if it means destroying his closest ally? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one and they help shape our future investigations. Thank you for watching. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and we will see you in the next dossier.